I'm Elizabeth Ross Holmstrom. I am the owner or the founder of Mindful Employer and the co-founder with Tara Jenkins of the Conscious Capitalism chapter here in Portland, and been involved in conscious leadership work. I just don't think we called it that before, but probably for 20 years, right? We've, those of us who are bringing humanity into the workplace first might have been doing this longer than this was a movement. So it's nice to be aligning with so many. Todd is here from the B Corp movement and others from that movement. So I feel like we're all in this, on this road together, which is a beautiful thing. So thank you all for joining today. And I'd love to start it out. We don't have that many folks on that we can't go around. And the first thing I'd love if you can share, if you're not in a place where you can unmute yourself and share, no worries. But if you can, we'll kind of popcorn it. I'll tag someone and then they can tag the next person if that works for you guys. And I'd like to start out with you sharing this. What is something that brings you joy? So you can share your name and if you want, where you work. And what's something that brings you joy where you completely lose track of time when you're doing it? So let's all, we'll start there. I'll toss it to Erica. And Erica, you can start.
Great, thank you. I'm Erica Newman. I'm involved with both the B Corps with Todd and on the Conscious Capitalism board or circle. And I do consulting in this field. And I've just become the executive director of a project, a new nonprofit called the Infinite Kindness Project, which is looking at post-traumatic growth for the front line with a focus on nurses. So something that brings me joy is paddling. Anytime I'm on the water paddling.
Nice.
And I will hand it to Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Bishop. I am a personal finance coach. My office is in Portland. I was actually going to say paddleboarding.
Nice.
I have other things that bring me joy too, but that was kind of the first thing that popped to mind. Like when I'm out there, it's like when and I only go out if the lake is very, very calm, and it's just totally totally silent. I love it. Oh, I'm supposed to pick someone. Sorry. The next person on my screen is Marshall.
Morning. Marshall Johnson. I'm a consultant in the health and welfare space and a very proud father of a 5-month-old. And I would say that spending time with my daughter is where I'm just completely present. So with that, I will pass it along to Lisa M.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm a community development officer at the Island Institute based in Rockland, Maine. And I lose track of time in my garden, and we are full on in harvest season right now. So I think I'm only going to take a half an hour to pick all the paste tomatoes, and then it's far more than that. And I will pass it to Todd.
Yeah, Todd Batchelder with Mascoma Bank, here with an office in Portland, Maine, though we're a New Hampshire-based bank, and we're a certified B Corp, and have been very involved with the Conscious Capitalism group and the certified B Corp group here in Maine. Yeah, I would say biking or paddling would probably be the two things that first come to mind. And I will pass it to... I got a tab over here. Lauren.
Maybe Lori.
Lori, all right.
Good morning. I'm Lori Bowie. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration with Maine Development Foundation. And we're based in Hollowell, so I'm in the Hollowell office today, but usually working from home. And the thing that brings me joy where I lose track of time is biking. I really like being outdoors as much as possible. No, and I know it's such a big difference if I can be. And who hasn't gone? I will pass it to Stephanie.
Stephanie, not sure if you're in a place where you can unmute yourself.
Audio is okay. I can, but are you, can you hear me okay?
Yes, there's a little bit of a skip. So maybe you can, if you shut your video off, that might help.
Sure, I'll do that. Hi, my name is Stephanie Treskill. Diverse hiring company called IndWork, and what makes me lose time is dancing and chatting with people in other languages. I love that too. I just love it.
Nice.
And then,
You cut out, Stephanie. So maybe I'll just pick really quick because I think I did skip Lauren because I wasn't looking at her lovely picture. So Lauren, if you want to go next.
Sorry, guys, I'm in the car, so you might not be able to hear me, but I work for a women's health pharmaceutical company doing sales for the state of Maine. Bringing me joy is being able to speak in another language. I was just in Madrid and had a great time practicing my Spanish.
Nice.
Great to be here.
Thank you, Lauren. And since you can't probably see as easily on your phone, I'll go to Orson.
Hi, I'm another car dweller, so hopefully you can hear me well.
Yeah.
My name is Orson Horkler, and I'm a carpenter, and I own a company called Bondeco, where I train immigrants and asylum seekers in the trades. I'm also a street artist, and one of the things where I really lose sense of time is when I'm playing music, including when I'm playing music with some of my carpenters, and because we have a band together, also called Bondeco. So,
Cool.
And I think Matthew hasn't gone yet.
Good job.
Very hard to keep track at this point in the game.
I know.
My name's Matthew Apuda. I'm a consultant. I'm an operations and innovation strategist, working with small businesses, small organizations. And what brings me joy is reading with my dog. She always has trouble sounding out the vowels, but she really enjoys the belly rub part of the process. So it evens out.
That's beautiful. And thank you, Matthew. Zuriel, I don't know if you can unmute or if you can be part of this.
Yeah, morning everyone. I'm Zuriel.
Good morning.
I'm from Mexico City. Yeah, sorry, but my camera is not working very well.
Beautiful.
Sorry about it. Well, I'm a data engineer. I really love to work with data also. Artificial intelligence, and I'm work at an enterprise called Improving iTexico. This is in Austin, Texas, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really enjoy passing some times with my children. I have twins. They are awesome. It's so funny passing time with them.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I'm here. Yeah, they are awesome. And I'm here because also I really like to learn about conscious capitalism. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. So I will, since it might be hard for some of you since you're traveling to type in something, but I would love to just quickly, we can maybe unmute all. I think we can do that quickly to help everyone. I don't know if you can try and do that, Miss Erica.
Okay. Unmute.
If not, I think we might be able to try to unmute. And if not, just unmute yourself. But I want you guys to popcorn because this is the first listening challenge. What did you hear? Just kind of shout it out. What did you hear? What are some of the things that bring people joy?
Being outside.
Yes.
Children.
Being with children.
Not
Also with
working.
children.
Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Being on the water.
Reading to dogs.
Hiking.
Gardening.
Yes. Nice, you guys.
Playing music.
Yes. That's mine, by the way. I didn't share. So I get lost in
Excellent.
writing and music. Awesome. So for me, you guys, one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about listening is it's just in the alignment, when we think about conscious capitalism or humanity at work, listening to each other and learning how to become better listeners is such a key component of conscious leadership, of leading with our hearts, right? And it's that opening, that expansiveness of kind of like reducing our egos to really, I teach mindfulness in the workplace and or have over the years, and that place of providing space to listen to ourselves and to listen to those that we're engaging with. And so to me, it's one of my favorite skills that I'm always trying to get better at, because, you know, I don't always do it well. Sometimes I get in a situation where I get really nervous and I feel like my ego comes front and center and I'm trying to prove something. And that's where I stumble when we're talking about listening. And listening, when we think about conscious capitalism around the stakeholder relationships we're building, is huge. It's a gift when we can provide space to listen to a customer and to our employees and help them feel heard. And so it's definitely a skill that that we can always do better at. And I'll just tell you a story that the thing about listening, I feel, is in its alignment with conscious leadership, is the place where we're serving, right? So when we're listening to someone else, we're often coming from a place of serving instead of trying to prove something. And that is a critical difference than when we're walking into a room. When we can come into a room with this consciousness, when we can give ourselves a breath, know that we're serving, we can create a mindset of listening. And I think that for me, I've learned that it starts there. Like, I even got nervous about a little bit this morning because a lot of people think I'm an extrovert, but I'm a bit of an introvert, I've learned through COVID. And I get a little nervous, like, what do I have to share about listening? And I spent, honestly, last night I was going out and I was looking at other material that other people have created in listening. And I thought, I'm just going to share from the heart. I'm just going to share what listening is, because that's how we learn from each other. And so for me, one of the things that I learned about listening is that piece around mindset and around learning that as a tool, it can really be a connector with other people. And so I've been lucky enough to be responsible for relationship building for many organizations in my career. And I was given this opportunity I was responsible, I was called, I was noticed here in Maine. I was working for an insurance company, Anthem. And I was noticed by their national account team that I had built this special program in Maine. And they thought that I might be able to serve in this capacity in New York City, leading a negotiation or leading basically an onboarding of a program with the Blackstone Group, which was one of the largest private equity groups in the world. And they are powerful. Like, in my whole head, I'm like, okay, like I stepped in, I can serve here and this would be a great thing. And then I got so nervous for that first meeting in New York City, right? Like, I'm in New York. I love New York. It's just the energy and the vibe. And then I'm going up that elevator to whatever floor we were at over on 39th Street. And I started getting really nervous. And even when Bob, the head of the Equity Health plan, had started talking, I'm like, I'm not really listening to him. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say so that I can present myself as being the right person, right? And I think the first thing I said was really disconnected from what he had said, because I wasn't listening to him. I was so damn nervous about how I was going to present that I didn't listen to what he was actually, the words that were coming out of his mouth. And so he had to repeat what he said to me. And I'm like, shit, right? Like, that's not how I want to come into this. And so I left that meeting feeling nervous. And what I actually learned at that meeting, you guys, this was just like a first starter meeting about what I was coming to learn to do, right? What I was being called to ask to do there. And that is that this deal had been struck with the head of health and well-being for Blackstone Group and the head of our national account division at Anthem on a napkin. Not kidding you. And there were 100,000 members that were going to join this program in just a few months. And it wasn't in a contract. It wasn't on paper. And so listening in this story has a second layer, and that is, how am I going to implement something that isn't on a piece of paper? And there's where listening really served, is, well, I need to start by understanding what people think that they sold and understanding what people think they bought, right? And that is where I started. And my nerves went down, and I realized that I am just here to serve, right? I just need to find out what they think they bought, what we think we sold, figure out where the links were in that, right? Like where was their crossover where they both believed the same thing? Let's get that down on paper. And then where were the differences? And that's where you got to start building bridges. And so I share that story just because it had such a powerful place in my heart for something that really taught me the difference. So do you guys have any examples of where listening, has kind of been front and center of something that might be an embarrassing moment, like my first one, and then served you well?
I don't know if it's cheating, it's someone else's story. It's my boss's story. And I was in San Francisco doing crisis communications and corporate communications. And my boss told the story when he was at Levi Strauss. And one of the chief protesters, very, very, very effective, grassroots, major firebrand, was protesting child labor and was going at Levi Strauss in her customary aggressive way. And they were moving up and down to all the apparel industry, and Levi's, he was the head of communications. And this is a stakeholder engagement listening story. They brought her into the executive boardroom. They walked out. They said, "We'd love to hear what you have to say." She had a bullhorn. They were protesting. They were ready. It wasn't going to get violent, but her language was violent. Her actions were violent. And they brought them into the boardroom. And that was the beginning of Levi Strauss really being the leader in being transparent, reflective, and listening, to move into supply chain, to work with the UN, International Labor Organization, to look at factory monitoring. They never got perfect. No one has. But that was a turning point in my kind of shift from corporate social responsibility, which is philanthropy and a few, charity walks, to what stakeholder engagement was. And it all began with listening to someone. She was shocked. His story was, she was not ready. She stopped to think, is this going to advance my cause to be invited in? Because there's a role of the outside agitator in social change also. So that's
a beautiful story. Yeah. Does anyone else have a short thing that came to mind before we move on to some examples? Yes, go.
One of the founding experiences of where I've ended up professionally is I have a background in technology, and technology project management is a special sort of nobody ever knows what's going on. And I found myself pretty regularly in the role of crisis project managing something that had gone off the rails in some way, shape, or form, usually through no one particular error, but through a comedy of a series of them. And I never really made the connection to the idea of communicating, but the way that I always solved it is, all right, sit down. All right, we're going to use our calm voices. Okay, what did you think was happening? What did you think was happening? What did happen? What needs to happen? And I'm just now making the connection that was a communication and listening exercise. I actually never realized that before.
Oh, I love that. It is, right? It's like this curious space we can be curious, and that really helps in thinking about our listening. And I'll actually jump to a little visual I'll share with you guys, just because it's something that helped me, or that helps me in terms of thinking about this, and that is the kind of the ways that we listen, right? And so there are some, actually, Dr. Neha, who's Raj Sisodia's partner, has a beautiful book called Talk RX, and she has a whole series of it's like the 5 levels of listening, which is beautiful, beautiful work. But it was funny because I had been describing the listening pieces as some of these things, and so they're very aligned. And as I was going out looking at other materials last night, because just thinking I needed one more visual that I wanted to share, I was like, it's really it all boils down to kind of these things. And so I'm just going to share the one that I already had, which is, there's this listening that a lot of us have gotten into today as we're, stuck at home and we're managing multiple things, right? And that's this we think we're listening, right? Or we're trying to listen, but we're multitasking. So we're listening in, and especially something like this, where you might be trying to squeeze it in your day, you're sort of interested in this topic, and yet you got stuff to do. And so we're listening, but we're not listening because we're off doing something else. And we know in the human psyche, we're able now to actually measure this activity using MRI technology. Jeb Brewer's done a lot of work around this in the mindfulness space. And that is that the human brain is actually not able to multitask. It's a lie. What we're doing is switch tasking. And even if you're kind of quickly micro switch tasking, going back and forth, your brain truly can't do any of those things well until you stop and you do one thing. It's just impossible. I mean, there are some people on the spectrum that are able to do that, but in all of the research that we've learned, it's really like 2% of the population. So only 2% of the population can really mentally micro multitask. So most of us aren't there. The other kind of listening is, and I'm going to ask for a volunteer in a minute, but I call it WOA just to remember it. You're waiting to talk, or there's the one-upman person, or there's, trying to build alliance. So for a second, I'm just going to stop there because it's kind of it makes it a little more powerful. Can I get a volunteer to raise their hand with me on this? Somebody who maybe hasn't volunteered yet. It's super easy. Thank you, Lisa. Can you unmute yourself, Lisa? All right. Did you do anything this summer? Can you talk to me about maybe something that you did that was fun this summer? And just start talking about it? Yeah.
Sure. My parents live on a lake in Massachusetts, and about once a year, the conditions are right. Also with COVID, it also has to be safe to travel and go visit them. But the conditions are right to go water skiing.
Oh my God, Lisa, I grew up water skiing. That is amazing. I totally grew up water skiing in Bass Lake, California. Go ahead.
And the conditions happened to be right, where it was cool and the water was flat enough, not a lot of other boat traffic, so that it was safe to practice dropping skis and have the boat come around and pick you back up when you did eventually tumble. And my boyfriend came with me and met my family for the first time, and he's a fantastic water skier, so much better than me, so he made a good impression on the family.
Yeah, I've been water skiing forever. My mom taught water skiing. She used to water ski in videos. I mean, it was just incredible. You couldn't even believe what a great water skier she was. And she used to teach do's and don'ts, all that kind of stuff. So what else did you say about what lake were you at again?
Oh, I didn't even say the lake I was at. So
well, can you share that?
Lake Quinsigamond in Massachusetts. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I know maybe your mom has skied there.
Probably, like on her head. So I'm just going to back up for a second and reshare, because thank you for volunteering, because it's to me, it's just so important. And I'm not, there we go. So the thing, and I'm sure you recognized it as I was busy interrupting Lisa, is that the first one is hard to demonstrate because you are waiting for her to finish. But the second she finishes, you're going to say what you were going to say without even really have heard her words, right? Like I did when I was with Blackstone. I blurted out what I thought was going to sound really impressive, and it didn't even match with what Bob said. So that's harder to demonstrate. But, you know, like the alliance, the first time I interrupted her, I was in the alliance mode, you know, saying, "Oh, I water ski too," right? But I didn't even hardly let her get her story out. And then, you know, that my mom is like the best water skier. It is kind of hilarious that you picked that though, Lisa, because my mom did teach water skiing. But, you know, that one-upmanship is something that we're always, like a lot of us are doing. And all of these things, if you can hear the thread in these examples, the being nervous and wanting to say the right thing, the alliance building, even the one-upmanship, all of that's coming from this place within us that wants to connect, right? This piece of us that wants to be allianced with. It's just the human nature of us. So even when we're interrupting or someone is interrupting us, when we take a breath as the person being interrupted and have a little kindness for them, we kind of know, we can see that it's coming from this place of ego or wanting to be connected. But what we don't see when we're doing that, when we're not in that space of recognizing that we're coming from ego, is that we're cutting people off. And we're not allowing them to be, right? We're not allowing it. So a couple other kinds of listening while we're here, and then we're going to do a quick exercise together. We're going to do a breakout, is that there is a kind of listening, which is just listening for content. It's kind of head listening using our brains, data listening. That can serve a real purpose, you guys. So and, you know, Matthew, you talked about being, you know, in technology, is that you can listen for data, and it's a good thing. Like sometimes if you're in a room, like when I've gone into some of those discussions that we were having with all of the stakeholders, there were 70 work groups involved that we had to listen and learn from in that equity healthcare work. And so often we'd go into the room and we'd have somebody head listening for data and scribing. So it's a real skill, and it's only one thing. Listening for data is only one way of listening. You're missing the human being. You're missing the emotion. You're missing, if you're just listening for data, you're often missing body language, right? And all the other cues, because we live as human beings so much in our head, like so much above the eyebrows, that we often don't allow all those other senses to be engaged, which make up our whole being and give us a lot more information. And that's where I find remembering that simple word of curiosity. Curiosity can bring us to this state that allows more of our senses to be engaged, right? We're breathing and listening, not nervously listening, right? When we're coming from, oh, I've got something to learn here. So we can pay attention to the data. We can pay attention to the emotions being shared. We can pay attention to underlying messages that we wouldn't be able to pay attention to if we're in WOA mode, WOA mode, or we're in just data only mode. So I'll share these visuals with you guys if you want to drop your emails in before, but I feel like it's just a helpful reminder of the different kinds of listening. And before I go to breakout groups, is any of that resonating with you guys? Yeah. Any thoughts that anybody wants to share before we go to a breakout session activity?
I just say, I think for those of us who weren't familiar with WOLA, that was great, because I'm now thinking about all the times I've done one of those three things.
Me too.
It's a nice framework with which to be thinking about all this stuff.
That was a painful list to go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me too. And Dr. Nia went through a similar thing, and I was like, oh my God, I remember learning about that 5 or so years ago, and that I had forgotten it as I busily try to align myself with people. Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to break us out into groups of 2. And I ask you guys to do this, and I'll actually share the screen because it'll give you a little visual, and you can write down if you've got it. Hold on, there we go. You can write down from this list. So we're going to do one-on-one talking. You're going to have 3 minutes each. So you're going to start with one speaker and one listener. There's just a couple of you. And if one of us gets to, maybe we'll have a group of 3, and that's okay. But you'll get through a couple people in the exercise. You're going to pick one of these 3 topics. So each of you will get a chance to speak. So write down which of these 3 topics right now that you might like to speak on when it's your turn. What in your life brings you joy? So we kind of had a little quick introduction of that for some of you, and how. So that's an easy one to get you going. Who has had a big impact on the person you become, and why? Is another one. Or what were you really into as a kid, and why did it capture you, do you think? So you can pick one of those 3 things. We're going to break into 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice as we break into these groups of 2. We're going to practice listening all the way through. So we're just going to let that person talk for 3 minutes as the listener. And then if that person stumbles, the one thing you can say is, tell me more. Okay. If they haven't, really said much and they stopped in a minute, I'm sure if you picked one of these 3 topics that you can find something more than a minute to talk about. So there'll be 3 minutes. I'll put a little reminder out there when the 3 minutes is up, and a reminder. So pay attention to the top of the screen. The listener can kind of pay attention a little bit to the top of the screen. But so it'll be 3 minutes listening. Then you, as the listener, get to say what you heard. Okay, so feedback what you heard, and maybe ask anything that's clarifying for 1 minute. And then the last minute is the speaker gets to say, yes, and here's a couple of things that I meant to also convey. Does that feel okay for you guys? And then we'll switch. And so that the other person will get a chance to do that. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to be behind the scenes for a second, because Erica, you and I can kind of stay out on our own, not in a breakout room. And so that I think we'll have 2, 4, 6, 8 right there. Okay. So 1 second here. All right. I'm going to open all the rooms. Let me see. Recreate 4 breakout rooms and recreate. There we go. Oh yeah, we got a good one. Let me just move one person. Bear with me. To room 4. And Erica. Erica, don't accept, okay? Don't accept a room. And then the rest of us can go. So here we go. It is 9:38. We're going to be back at 9:48. It worked. How was that?
Really nice.
Good.
I enjoyed talking to Lori.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I was very aware of the fact that it was an activity, and I was just dialed in on trying to listen. And I thought, boy, this would be hard to do all the time. And I think that was my takeaway: is it takes practice. Being a good listener is hard.
Amen. Yeah. What else came up for you guys?
I found some ease in it because I was let off the hook, even though I had to be listening in order to be able to share back. But I was let off the hook because there was no pressure behind it. There was no expectation that I would say the right thing or bring something new to the conversation.
Ooh, that's a good one, Lisa. That's a good one. We really bring, when you're in a room with expectation, and, you know, especially like if I'm in with my boss, my manager, or potential client or what have you, you know, and you're wanting to, this is another piece of this, is wanting a particular outcome, right? So there's something in this curious listening that is trying to let go of wanting a particular outcome, because it's really freeing. When we come at a place of service and curiosity and seeing what could happen, we're off the hook, right? We're not on the hook. It is this, it brings us like this new paradigm that's happening in work, you guys, is bringing us to a place of co-creation, right? More and more, we're recognizing every single human being has something to contribute, and we can only learn what it is when we create these situations to listen. And I have one story, like a final story around that, which is I worked for Anthem locally in the market, and there was a customer that was a 20,000 life customer. There's only like 3 of them in Maine. And for 9 years before I joined Anthem and before I went through the Institute for Civic Leadership program, which changed my world, Lori, for 9 years, we had that company had asked for us to quote them, our products. And we said, no. We said, you're far too complex a client, and we don't think we can serve you well. Like, we don't think we can do it. And by going in and just being curious about what they truly wanted, and then taking that information and going back inside the company and talking with all the people that would be involved in that, we found a way that was co-created by like 20 people to create something that would work for them. And it led to like the largest sale in the state for like 10 years running. Right? By partnering, by listening, by co-creating. It's magic sometimes, I think, when we come from there. What else came up for you guys?
I wanted to share while Todd was talking. I definitely was like fighting between fully listening and also like, oh, that makes me think of something. Or like I've had a similar experience. I'm like, yes.
Yes. Which is coming from this place of like, when we get interrupted, having that kindness, because Erica pointed this out, having that kindness for that person of they're just wanting to be liked. And maybe it's my opportunity to say, can I finish for a second? And I really want to hear you then, right? It's wanting to feel aligned. Orson, were you trying to push on? I know you got to go.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, I was in the group with Matthew, and he did such a good job listening that when he repeated what I told him, it sounded so much better. I mean, it was so much more articulate. So I wrote it down because I think I'm gonna use that to talk to others now.
Oh, I love that example, right? Like, it gives us, we only have our own perspective. That is such a great example, that when somebody else feeds something back to us, we get to listen to it for the first time sometimes. That's great.
I sort of had this thought, and I appreciate Lisa's comment, of like, I really enjoy talking to strangers. I'm one of those people that would probably, strike up a conversation with someone that I've never met. And I'm kind of realizing now, as I think about it, I think maybe I do a better job of listening because I don't necessarily want or need anything. And I'm being a little bit vulnerable in saying that because it sounds very like salesy. Like I'm having a conversation with you because I need something. And I think when you can let go of that mentality of service, and it's not about you, it's okay to want something and maybe you articulate that in the right way. But the dynamic in my conversation with Lisa, whom I'd never met prior to today, it's like, to her point, it's casual and fun, and we're not trying to accomplish anything. And maybe that's the point. Like when you listen, just listen and forget about what you're trying to accomplish or the end goal, which takes a lot of practice. But
yeah, I love that. It's the hardest thing. Who else have what other thoughts, you guys?
Part of this conversation reminded me of advice that I was given 3 lifetimes ago. Background that I don't want to admit to, in my early 20s, I was a little bit lost and found myself selling cars because they'll hire literally anybody. And the advice that I got on how to negotiate, because of course everybody's angry at the person selling them a car. Don't know if you knew that. That's what I learned. But the advice that I got from my sales manager is the person who comes out on top is the person who cares least. It was the idea of caring as little as possible about what was going on. And that is advice that always stuck with me, because it's like we're talking about, if you want a particular outcome, you get emotionally wrapped up in trying to control it along the way. But even in this high pressure environment where people that weren't me were making a lot of money, the idea of, well, remove yourself from caring at all, and then you will actually get there.
I love that you said those words, and because what it reminds me of in this new paradigm, this new language, right, bringing that forward to today, is that there's attachment to outcome and an opportunity to care deeply without being attached to outcome. That is sort of bringing that to a newer level of consciousness, right? We can love and push out compassionate energy and allow ourselves from an ego perspective to let go of outcome, which is really nice. I'm aware that you beautiful people probably have somewhere to be at 10, and I thank you for joining. If you don't mind, I'll send you a little visual from some of the things that I had today. Would that be okay? I'll send you that, and then I'll send you the notes to link to Dr. Neha and a link to Judd Brewer's work, because his work is really fascinating around the MRI technology around creating space. Thank you all for joining.